My name is Charlotte, and this is the story of how I turned the most painful fall of my life into an unexpectedly sweet victory. In business, just like in family, sometimes the person you trust the most is the one ready to push you off the cliff. But they often forget that before pushing someone down, they need to take a good look at what's beneath their own feet. Parker Solutions, a company that today everyone knows as a leading tech enterprise worth hundreds of millions of dollars, was once just a tiny office tucked into a basement corner, with a few worn-out desks and a coffee machine that constantly made clattering sounds. My father, Henry Parker, was a true technology genius. Since I was little, he could turn any piece of computer hardware into a perfectly functioning machine. However, he wasn't good at business. Financial reports always gave him headaches, and those red profit numbers on paper cost him many sleepless nights. In 2012, Parker Solutions was just 3 months away from shutting down due to an inability to pay off debts. At that time, I had just graduated from business school, full of enthusiasm and fresh knowledge. My brother Brandon was already 32 years old, famous throughout the town for his lavish lifestyle and extravagant parties. To my father, Brandon was always the perfect son. He had a charming smile, knew how to win people over, and never seemed to lack friends around him. But there was one thing he didn't have: the ability to retain clients. I still remember that gloomy, rainy afternoon. When I opened the office door, I saw my father sitting motionless in front of the computer screen, his eyes red, and financial reports scattered all over the desk, filled with negative numbers. "It's over, Charlotte," he whispered, his voice as shattered as a porcelain cup hitting the tiled floor. "Everything I built will be lost." Something inside me snapped. My whole life, my father had looked at Brandon with pride while I was just a shadow. But seeing him like that, I couldn't let his lifelong dream fade away. Brandon continued his long nights at upscale clubs while I began my relentless workdays. I taught myself every aspect of the company, from drafting contracts to customer care, from budget calculations to optimizing production processes. Every day, my mother brought dinner to the office for me. "You need to rest, Charlotte," she often said. Her eyes filled with worry when she saw me living only on coffee and cold plates of food. The first year was truly a tough battle. I had to renegotiate debts, cut every unnecessary expense, including the company credit card that Brandon still used for shopping and entertainment. I personally visited every former client, many of whom shut the door on me immediately. But I didn't give up. Every day they saw me show up with a smile and a fresh offer of collaboration. Perseverance finally paid off. By the end of that year, Parker's Solutions not only stopped losing money, but also began to turn a profit. Brandon still mocked me. "Look at little Charlotte playing business," he would often sneer. "Dad is still going to give me the company, you know. I am the real heir." I didn't respond, just continued with my work. In the following years, I started transforming Parker Solutions from a small tech consulting firm into a comprehensive business, providing digital transformation solutions and developing proprietary software. From $3 million in revenue, we hit $15 million, then $80 million, and finally surpassed $120 million last year. The company's staff grew from a few dozen to over 400, with offices in 3 different countries. My father's health gradually improved as the company grew, but his favoritism remained unchanged. Even though Brandon rarely showed up at the office, every success of the company was somehow attributed to his leadership skills. During family dinners, when my father spoke about Brandon's brilliant strategies, I stayed silent, listening while reviewing quarterly reports on my phone. I didn't need recognition. I needed the company to be stable and our employees to have secure jobs. But I wasn't naive. During those years, I quietly collected documents about all of Brandon's wrongdoings. The contracts he messed up, the clients he lost, and every dollar he wasted. Moreover, I built strong relationships with clients, making myself indispensable in their operations. Nobody knew that when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, I had used my entire savings and took out additional bank loans to keep Parker Solutions afloat. In return, I received a significant share of the company. exactly 45%. I always thought that would be enough to protect me, to prevent anyone from pushing me out of the big picture. But I was wrong, and I had no idea that the real storm was still ahead. That morning, the large conference room at Parker Solutions was packed. All shareholders, board members, and investors were present, their eyes eagerly focused on the podium where my father, Henry Parker, was about to make the most important announcement of his career. I sat in the front row, next to Brandon, who looked so confident that it made me a bit uneasy. But I quickly brushed off that thought, telling myself that today would be the day I was finally recognized for everything I had done. My father started with his familiar warm voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, after more than 30 years of dedication, I officially announce my retirement. This was not an easy decision, but I believe that my successor will lead Parker Solutions to new heights." I sat up straight, clutching the company's growth plan tightly in my hands. My father's eyes glanced over me but then settled on Brandon. "Therefore, I am very pleased to announce that as of today, Brandon Parker will officially take over the position of CEO of Parker Solutions." I felt as if someone had just pulled the chair out from under me. Sparse applause echoed around the room, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard my father continue. "Furthermore, after thorough consideration, we have discovered some inappropriate actions in recent management activities. Certain decisions were made without board approval, affecting the transparency and integrity of the company." Brandon stood up, holding a folder in his hand. "Unfortunately, that person is my sister, Charlotte. The evidence here shows that Charlotte signed contracts without the necessary approvals, jeopardizing the financial security of Parker Solutions." All eyes turned to me, a mix of surprise and suspicion. I stood up, about to speak, but 2 security guards had already appeared beside me. "Charlotte, you are suspended immediately. Please leave," one of them said, his tone unmistakable. Brandon shrugged, a half-smile full of fake sympathy on his face. "Charlotte, I'm really sorry. But maybe it's time for you to find a new life, outside of Parker Solutions." I was led out of the building that I had helped build with my own hands, each step as heavy as if weighed down by lead. I felt a lump in my throat, but I knew that crying or arguing would not solve anything at this point. When I got home, I sat in my small office, staring at the computer screen still displaying the completed quarterly report. Taking a deep breath, I opened my phone and sent a single message to an old friend at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. SEC. "I have important information about Parker Solutions. We need to meet." The weekend passed in a strange silence. My mother called dozens of times, leaving tearful messages about family unity and forgiveness. My father remained completely silent, while Brandon seemed too busy celebrating his victory, as evidenced by a series of social media photos with his bright smile and company credit card bills. At exactly 9 a.m. on Monday, I sat in front of my computer, connected to Parker Solutions' internal system. I knew every nook and cranny of this system because I had built it from scratch. When Brandon entered the CEO office, his computer screen did not display the usual login page, but instead played a video. In the video, Brandon sat in that very office, speaking with a representative of our biggest competitor. His voice rang out clearly. "Just transfer to my personal account, and I'll get you all the client data. My little sister does all the work anyway, I just sign off." Brandon panicked, desperately trying to turn off the screen, but it was useless. Every monitor in the office displayed the same video, and not only that, all computers within Parker Solutions' internal system showed the same scene. While Brandon was still struggling, shareholders and employees received emails containing full evidence of insider trading, asset misuse, and details that the SEC could not ignore. Through the security camera feed, I saw federal agents entering the building, subpoenas in hand. Brandon tried to call my father, but he did not answer. Perhaps at that moment, he was receiving equally unsettling news about his beloved son. When the entire IT department resigned simultaneously, Brandon completely lost control. All critical data, contracts, and intellectual property of the company had already been transferred to a subsidiary called Parker Innovation Labs. This company owned everything that made Parker Solutions valuable, and the sole owner was none other than me. Brandon had no idea that all client contracts had been transferred, and nearly all the employees had already accepted my invitation to join Parker Innovation Labs. 2 FBI agents entered the room, requesting Brandon's cooperation in their investigation. He shouted angrily, trying to assert his authority as CEO, but all legal documents had been meticulously prepared. The board immediately held a vote to remove Brandon from his position, and I was ready for my next move. As Brandon was escorted out of the building, I sent a final email to all remaining Parker Solutions employees. A new opportunity awaits you at Parker Innovation Labs, where innovation and true values are respected. Join us, where your efforts will be truly recognized. Within just an hour, the majority of employees had agreed to transition to the new company. Parker Solutions, once the pride of my family, was now just an empty shell, with no clients, no staff, and no remaining value. This was only the beginning of the game I had been preparing for years. 3 weeks after Brandon's arrest, I sat in my new office at Parker Innovation Labs, a modern glass building in the heart of San Francisco. From here, I could see the Golden Gate Bridge shimmering under the afternoon sun. The feeling of freedom and control over everything was surreal, but I knew my story was not yet over. That morning, Sarah, my loyal assistant, entered the room with a white envelope in her hand. "Charlotte, Mr. Goldman, your parents' financial advisor just sent this document," she said, placing the envelope on my desk. "He said it's urgent." I opened the envelope to find a detailed financial report on the Parker family's assets. The more I read, the more it felt like the blood in my veins was turning to ice. My parents had poured all their savings and retirement funds into Parker Solutions stock, and with the company's rapid collapse, those investments were now worth next to nothing. "He wants to set up a meeting with you this afternoon," Sarah added. I nodded slightly, signaling her to arrange the meeting. My mind was filled with overlapping memories, from when I was a child looking up to my father as a hero, to the moment he betrayed me in front of everyone. That afternoon, Mr. Goldman walked into my office, his white hair and worried expression making him look older than ever. "Charlotte, your parents, they're in a very bad situation," he began. "The family home has been foreclosed by the bank, and without a solution, they might not have a place to stay." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. "What do they want from me?" "Mr. Henry wants to meet you. He said they only need enough support to get through this difficult period." I stayed silent for a moment, then turned to Sarah, who was quietly standing in the corner of the room. "Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning, here," I said, "and ask the legal department to prepare some documents." The next morning, my parents arrived at Parker Innovation Labs. My mother looked thin and exhausted, her eyes swollen from too much crying. My father, once proud and confident, now seemed to have aged a decade in just a few weeks, walking slowly with a cane. They sat down on the chairs opposite me, the same model of chairs my father used to make me sit in whenever he wanted to lecture me about real leadership. "Son," my father began, his voice hoarse, "I know I made mistakes, but we are family. Family always helps each other, right?" I looked him straight in the eyes, unwavering. "Family? When you let Brandon destroy everything I built, did you think of family? When you accused me in front of all the shareholders, did you remember that I was also your child?" My mother started crying, soft sobs breaking the silence of the room. "We have nothing left, Charlotte. We could lose our home. Please." I opened the drawer, took out a prepared folder, and slid it across the table to them. "This is my offer. Parker Innovation Labs will buy back your shares in Parker Solutions at their original purchase price. This will be enough for you to have a stable life in the small house in Florida you've always dreamed of." Their eyes lit up with hope, but I wasn't finished. "There are conditions," I continued. "First, you must sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding all of Brandon's actions and what happened at Parker Solutions. Second, You will withdraw from all business activities and will not interfere with my work. Third, the funds will be managed by a financial trustee. You will receive a fixed allowance each month to ensure the money isn't wasted. My father froze, clearly hurt by the conditions I set. You don't trust us? No, you taught me that lesson well, I replied. I'm helping you not because of you, but for the 12-year-old child who once thought his father hung the moon. That child deserves to see his family live in peace, even if he knows the harsh truth. After a long silence, they signed the documents. When they stood up, my mother took my hand, her fingers cold. Thank you, Charlotte. We're very sorry things turned out this way. I didn't respond, just gestured for security to escort them out. When the door closed, I sat back in my chair, feeling an emptiness as vast as a void. 5 years have passed since that day. Parker Innovation Labs has become one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the U.S., reaching a $1 billion market valuation. After his release from prison, Brandon had to move to Las Vegas, working as a bartender to make ends meet. My parents live quietly in Florida, occasionally sending postcards to the company address, but I have never replied. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at my old business school with the topic, The Importance of Integrity in Family Business. Standing on stage, looking at the young students below, I told my story, not hiding the dark corners or mistakes of the past. Sometimes the sweetest revenge, I concluded, is not destroying your enemies, but building success so great that they must realize they bet on the wrong horse. Because in business, as in life, it doesn't matter who starts at the top. What matters is who is still standing when the dust settles. The auditorium erupted in applause, but all I could hear was the steady, calm rhythm of my own heartbeat, because I knew that in the end, I had won. Not just against my family, but against my former self. Looking back on my journey, I realized that sometimes the most painful betrayals become the greatest motivations to rise above. I learned that true success is not about getting back at those who hurt you, but about building a life so remarkable that they have to see their own mistakes. Now, I no longer seek validation from my family or anyone else. Instead, I am proud to have stood strong on my own and created a legacy worth carrying forward. If Charlotte's story gave you some thoughts about family and perseverance, please share your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to never miss more captivating stories about life and family. See you in the next video.